Hello everyone, welcome back. It is again Season coming at you with another video, and I do apologize for the delay in uploading. I will explain that at a later date. But yes, we are back. Gameplays Black Ops 7. Enjoyed the beta. That's coming out soon. Plenty more videos coming out soon, so definitely stay subscribed if you already are. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that right now. Drop a like, it would be greatly appreciated. But today we're talking about the college football coaching carousel. So this is the time of year where the athletic directors have to evaluate their head coach and decide if that coach is taking them in the right direction and what they want to do next. So one thing I'll say is it is very important, if your team is not just being run into the absolute ground, that you should have your guy ready when you fire your head coach. Otherwise, you get yourself into some really awkward positions. If you've just been run all the way into the ground, then you appoint an interim coach till the end of the season and then decide where to go from there. But if you're a higher tier program that's just struggling a bit and you decide to make a change, you really should have your next guy ready and lined up, at least to some extent. So jumping in with definitely the most high-profile coach that we have seen fired, it was Penn State firing James Franklin. They fired him after a 3-0 start, followed by an overtime loss to Oregon and losses to UCLA and Northwestern. This comes on the heels of a very successful season last year. And coming into this year, everyone said it was the most talented team he's ever had, led by quarterback Drew Aller, who had a chance to go to the NFL draft, and looking back now, probably should have. He had a season-ending injury versus Northwestern, and his draft stock really is up in the air at this point, as far as how high he'll be taken. Probably would have been a first-round draft pick last year, so very unfortunate there. Now, as far as Penn State, they were the first top 10 team to lose to an 0-4 or worse opponent in 40 years, and the first FBS team in the last 30 years to lose consecutive games as at least 20-point favorites. That is completely unacceptable when you have the aspirations of a team and the success that they had last year that James Franklin was facing. And he's been criticized his entire time coaching at Penn State. He's been criticized saying he can't win the big game. He'll win all of the easy ones, and then as soon as they play a good team, they lose, and it derails their season, and they just continually fall short. This year, he wanted to change that narrative and went out and lost some games that they had to win, and ultimately it cost him his job. I mean, losing to Northwestern, who was a perpetual Big Ten bottom feeder, and UCLA, who had not won a game, and most people thought they might go 0-12, is just unacceptable, so I think they made the right decision in getting rid of him when they did. The key is they need to have their guy. And looking at their candidates, here's what I've written down. Matt Rule from Nebraska. I think this is a very good fit. I can really see this happening. We'll talk more about him in a second. Mike Elko from Texas A&M. This one's a bit of a pipe dream. He's shut it down pretty well. I do not see that happening. A&M is having a very good season. I don't know why he would leave. Another long shot, Curt Cignetti from Indiana. They just signed him to a massive contract extension. He seems pretty happy. The team's cruising. I don't know why he would make the jump now as late into his career as he is. And another name I've seen is Eli Drinkwitz from Mizzou. This one's a bit interesting, although I think it's a bit of a long shot. I just don't really see Drink fitting in with Penn State. Now, that is kind of overly optimistic as a Mizzou fan. I do not want to see my coach leave, and I just really do not see it happening, so I'm a little bit confident that he will not go there. I think the most likely candidate is Matt Rule from Nebraska. Nebraska has never been able to get over the hump. They're kind of perpetually mediocre. Their fans every year set completely unrealistic expectations, and sooner or later they're going to get tired of Rule. They'll win a couple of games and be convinced they're back, and then they'll lose a bad one or lose a couple in a row. So I wouldn't be that surprised if Rule went to Penn State. If you listen to his comments about Penn State, he seems very interested. Now on to the next spot. It is the SEC and Florida firing Billy Napier. This one was a bit strange, seeing as they just won the game last weekend against Mississippi State, although, as a Florida fan, you shouldn't be in a game with Mississippi State, and the Napier era has not been very successful. It's just been continually coming up short, not being remotely as successful as they would hope to be, and Florida fans, kind of like Nebraska fans, have their expectations set back to when they were a powerhouse, and they haven't been that for a while. Now, Florida was a lot more recent with like the Tim Tebow era, unlike Nebraska, who is way in the past. But their program just isn't back there quite yet. The throne shoe incident completely derailed the program, and I will not be convinced otherwise. But I would say they have to have their guy in mind if they're going to fire their coach after an emotional win. Mississippi State was driving down to kick a field goal and win the game, and they dropped a defensive lineman into coverage, and he picked it off, and it saved their butt. But I have a feeling Napier knew he was gone during that game. And they have a lot of candidates because this is such a recent firing, and there's definitely some over-optimism in the Florida camp. Namely, their first candidate, Lane Kiffin. I don't know why he would leave Ole Miss for Florida. Ole Miss is in a much better position right now, and I don't see him leaving. Eli Drinkwitz, intriguing, but I'm not sure that I see it happening. Again, I'm a Mizzou fan, so I'm going to be more likely to say it's not happening just because I would be devastated if Drink left. And I don't know why he would. I don't know why he'd want to rebuild Florida at this point. I mean, he's built something so good at Missouri, has so much good going for him, but you never know what kind of money they're willing to offer him. Jed Fish is a name I've seen. Marcus Freeman, that could be an intriguing one just because, you never know if Freeman wants to make the jump to the SEC. But with going to the national championship game last year, I don't really see him making that jump right now. And the last high-profile candidate I have is James Franklin. Now, I'm going to give a most likely scenario, but this firing is so recent that I'm just going to put James Franklin as the most likely, even though I would give this like a 2 out of 5 confidence that it's even the top candidate. Franklin's a program builder. He'll build Florida better than they are at the moment. I think it would be an okay fit. I think it would be good to get him back coaching. It'd be interesting to see him in the SEC, to see if he can stand up where you're playing a big game every week. I mean, there really aren't a lot of easy games in the SEC. Even Vanderbilt's good. So I think Franklin is a possibility, but again, it's just too early to have a real strong opinion. Next, we're on to Arkansas. They fired Sam Pittman after a rocky start to the year. This was an interesting one because almost every Arkansas fan I've talked to on the internet wanted him gone after last year. For some reason, they put all of this confidence behind him and then fired him early in the year. Now, they have stabilized a bit. Their offense has looked good. Their defense has just been pathetic. And the last 2 weeks under interim Bobby Petrino, they've looked okay. Speaking of candidates, Bobby Petrino, I'll just say it right now. He's the most likely candidate to stay on after being an interim. Wild Arkansas stuff going on if he does become the head coach. Definitely not Dan Mullen. He just said he doesn't want it, but he nominated Gus Malzahn, which is a funny one there. Again, I said that Petrino's the most likely. He has a history with Arkansas. Keep him away from motorcycles. But he stabilized the team well so far this year, and they could probably get him for pretty cheap, so I can honestly see that being a pretty good fit. Arkansas is probably going to have trouble drawing a really high-profile name, just because they've been so poverty for so long. The last position is Oklahoma State, with Mike Gundy being fired. I honestly don't really feel like talking about candidates, if I'm being completely honest. Oklahoma State is a decent program. Gundy built them to be about as good as I think they'll ever be, so it's sad seeing him go out, but it did need to be done. That firing sucked a little bit just because I really did like watching Gundy coach, but they had just been so bad that I knew it was going to happen. Now that we've covered all of the firings, I'm going to talk about some potential firings, starting with Wisconsin's Luke Fickell. Now, the athletic director, Chris McIntosh, threw a support behind him today, which is not being received well by the Wisconsin fans. I do not blame them, if I'm being perfectly honest. I would be so ready to get rid of Fickell at this point. They have an absolutely pathetic offense, 15-18 in his career, and most of those wins came with the previous coaches' rosters. They've had back-to-back shutout home losses. They're staring down the barrel of a 2-10 season. The fans are chanting "Fire Fickell" at every game, and they just have no offense to speak of, and their defense isn't exactly elite. I would expect this job to come open at some time in the near future, maybe after the season. I think this could be a situation where they just don't want to fire their coach. They want to slow play it. That buyout isn't exactly easy to pay out, and they're just in a really bad position. but they've made it clear that no change is going to be made at this moment. Another potential opening, Florida State. Mike Norvell is one of the craziest coaching careers I think I've ever seen. They went from the first undefeated conference champion to miss the college football playoff. Then they followed that up with a 2-10 season where the wheels fell off after the college football playoff fiasco. They were 3-0 to start the season, and they beat Bama in their opener, and vibes are high. Their fans thought they might be back. And then they rattled off 4 straight losses with an absolute heartbreaker to Stanford on the last play. And at this point, I think pretty much everyone would expect the coach to be fired. But it sounds like Norvell will be the coach through the end of the season. And I think, kind of like Wisconsin, but even more than Wisconsin, they're trying to slow play it and make sure they get their guy. It's so messy right now with specifically Florida and Penn State that you want to make sure you have your guy lined up. And Norvell is a good enough coach that you don't want to fire him right now and not have your guy lined up and make this season way worse than it needs to be. Auburn with Hugh Freeze. I don't see this job coming open. They've kind of been screwed by the refs. They've had some real heartbreaking losses. They just lost in double overtime to Mizzou in a game where their kicker missed 3 relatively short field goals. If I'm the athletic director, I see the vision. I think they're a couple steps away from being back to respectable. I would have no reason to fire him, but just because it is Auburn and they've historically been pretty good, I can see that coming into conversations later in the season. Kentucky with Mark Stoops. Kentucky is absolutely awful. As of recent, they've just been a basketball school, so I wouldn't be surprised if they kept Stoops along for a while. I don't know his contract situation, if there's a big buyout or whatever, but that's definitely a name I could see getting fired or at least moving into the very hot seat very soon. And then finally, to finish this video off, a very, 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 very lightly warm seat. Right now, I would not consider it a hot seat. I wouldn't even put it on warm seat, but Brian Kelly and LSU. You start the year highly ranked, lots of aspirations, you're thinking your quarterback's a Heisman contender, and then you go out and they're on the verge of being unranked. They've lost 2 games, and granted, those 2 games were to very decent to good teams. I mean, Vanderbilt, we'll see how the rest of the season plays out, but Vandy looks pretty legit this year. So I would not say he's on the hot seat. I just think the fans expected more, and depending on how this season goes, it'll kind of shape his situation leading into next year. But I'm definitely interested to hear what you all have to say about the coaching carousel this year. It is off to an absolutely insane hot start. I'll probably make some more videos on it, just because I absolutely love this aspect of college football. Let me know who you think's going where down in the comments. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a like, subscribe if you're new. Check out my social medias down in the description, and I'll catch you very soon with another video.